She was holding a pad, whispering to it, like it was the only friend she's ever had, because it was not a drum, not a pebble, not even one of cultural dishes that shows at every small town funeral whether you want them or not. But small and trembling, its left wing bent in kind of angle that makes your stomach drop, and she was whispering to it, slow and steady, the way a grandmother whispered to a sleeping infant she doesn't want to wake. That was the night everything began to change. The village of shadow, where the fog never quite left. Before noon, Stonehouse accords with a bell that rang flat on the cold days. A well so old nobody remembered who dug it, only that the waters gently of iron and old winter. The kind of place everybody knows your name, and most of them wish they didn't. Dahlia Thorne had lived the all 22 years of her life, and more accurately, she had survived there. She was not the village beauty. She was not the village eccentric, which at least would have been interesting. She was the girl with the tangled brown hair and the pale hands, and the gray eyes that look at you a bit too long, like she was reading something written behind your shoulder. She was swept us from the court's killer. She was sold in the cold creek before funeral. She was done the butcher blocked after slaughter without being asked. Work that nobody wanted, a life that nobody noticed. It had been that way since she was three coming of age ritual. Every child inside the went fast through it, the way children in the other place have first communions or other time drive down an empty road and feel for exactly 30, like the whole future is wide open. Inside the van, the high priest pressed a hand to Charles' chest and listened for blood gift, a magic line, the fan force of something. Holly went to Dahlia's chest. She recoiled. Nothing. She said, the way you might say rotten when you cut open piece of fruit. No blood gift, no magic line, no holy light. Pause and then, like verdict, she's empty. One word, 9 seconds. A life changed forever. Her parents moved her to the red seats behind the house, not cruelly. Or at least they told themselves it wasn't cruel. The way people always find a way to tell themselves is practical, not unkind. Relatives told their children not sit near her, not because they fear misfortune. They fear something simple, that she was useless. Another moth in village that had brutal winter that enough of anything. She learned to live quietly, to ask for nothing. Every night when the village light went out, she wrapped her shawl tight and slipped out the ancient stone well behind the coach. No one body used anymore. She brought what's carried without being noticed. A hill bread, small jar of goat's meal, sometimes a few dried apple slices saved from her own tin. Whether might need it, she couldn't have explained to that anyone. She just knew something. One life near that well. Something that Felix had decided to forget, and she understood that feeling better than she understood most that particular night. The first snow winter had just touched the ground. Her her boots left small prints. The well sat squat in the dark against the white, and the base of it curls against like it was trying to. The monster was about. Its left wing was wrong, folded at an angle, no wing should ever fold. A few drops of blood had soaked into the snow beneath, struck its ink. She knew what happened. The village boys. They had a fine afternoon throwing rocks at things. She crouched down. At bad pinches, a full-bodied tumult that mean, please don't. But it didn't try to flee. Maybe it was too tired. Maybe it's understood the way animals sometimes do. Her hands from the walls that had done this, she tore stripped from the damp her underskin. Her mother told her once, when still talked to her mother, talk to doctor, that you always carry a little extra clothes for what Dahlia had asked, for whatever needs. Her mother had said. She wiped the wings slowly, a gentle single drop at the bad blood fell into the back of her hand for just one moment. Her heart beat too. Something trapped deep in her chest. Not pain, not warmth exactly, more like a door. Somewhere very far inside her, shifting on a hinge for the first time, she named the bed Nocturne. She didn't know why. It seems right. She held it close and whispered, "You and me both, a little one." In the distance, the church bell rang. Then Mistress Whisper cut through the dark like a clipper. "Dahlia Thorne, you've stolen food again." What? No one in Shadow Fen could have known. What even Dahlia herself would not understand until much later. Was that the blood that had just touched her hand did not belong to an ordinary bed? And the string in her chest, that was not just kindness awakening, that was something ancient, something the pirate had spent 9 years trying to bury, finally opening its eyes. In the whole village called UMT. Will you stay quiet or fight back? Drop. Stay quiet or fight back below. What punishment await her now? Dahlia Thorne, Mistress Grimm was not a large woman, but she had the quality that certain small women develop over decades of being underestimated, a compactness to her anger, the way a stone longer than a bonfire. She stood in the hands on her lips, and her lips pressed so thin they disappeared. "That breath," she said, "belonged to the court's ladder." "It took 2 hills," Dahlia said, "the kind at the bottom of the basket for a week. You took what wasn't yours." Mistress looked at the bad bundle against Dahlia's chest. Her face did something complicated. "Feeding a filthy animal with cursed stores," she said. "The cursed stores? My retirement savings, sacred and endangered." The punishment was cheap, and punishment in shadow. Fen often were for Dahlia, both exercise disguised as practical. She was clean beneath the old curtains tonight alone, with a bucket and stiff, British and single lantern that was already running low on oil. "Don't come back until it's done," Mistress Wester went inside. The crypts had not been properly cleaned since the last vampire raid. The air set heavy and cold damp, in the particular way of places that have never fully dried out, like basement that flooded once and held the memory its walls ever. The smell was on iron, old stone, all dark. Dahlia walked by lantern's light. Nocturne dozes inside her soul, still warm, still breathing. The drip of water somewhere deep the crypt's measured like a swallow's clock. She was scrubbing the dirt when Nocturne, not the small restless staring of sleeping animal, a sudden alert awakening. Head up in the mid wings, half split, a soft that sounded almost like recognition. The kind of sound a dog when it hears cartoon into the street 4 minutes before anyone else can hear a thing. The shadows shifted, not the way shadows shifts when a candle flickers, the way they shift when something within them moves. He stepped forward slowly. If she understood, moving quickly would be kind, and the lantern light found him in peace. Peace. First the clock, back as the space between stars. Silver detailing at the collar, the cock the light like frost. Then the height of him, taller than any man she had ever seen. The kind of tall recognized a room around it, and then the hair, long and silver white, falling loose over his shoulders, utterly still in a place where there was to explain, and then the eyes, garnet red passion, older than the crypts, nocturne left her entirely. The bats flew on the mended wing, wobbling slightly but instantly, and landed in the curve of the man's arm, graving, pressing its smile against himself, though Dahlia did not scream. She considered it, decided would not help. She understood. In the particular calm of someone who has already survived every ordinary fear, her spirit had to offer exactly what she was looking at. And she sat down, the brush with care. "You paid my blood messenger," he said. His voice was low and deep. The voice of someone who had once given orders to armies has since learned to be quiet. The way who have held for every long time often go still. "It was hard," Dahlia said. And no one else would even look at it. Something shifted in his expression. Not much, just like easing. The way a door that has been closed a long time when the temperature finally changes. He stepped closer without asking, and yet somehow without intruding. He reached, turned her palm upward. His fingers were cool and precise, a scholar's steadiness, and he examined the faint trace, blood on her skin, that she was not to receiving from any living thing. She felt the odd string again, deeper, no more certain. Like that door swinging further open. "You're not going to bite me?" she asked. He looked up and then quietly, broadly, like a man who had almost forgotten how. He laughed. "I would rather go hungry for a century," he said, "than harm the warm home curry for my messenger." He released her hands.